Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's class on weight management. The focus of our class today is going to be on maintaining or losing weight. So it comes to no surprise that as a nation, we are growing, not just in numbers of persons, but size of those people. So why is that? Think about a couple different ideas. Jot them down on your slides if you feel so inclined. But I think we could summarize it, and I've got a 4 here. I think we could probably spend an entire class talking about this. But if I had to summarize it into 4 areas, I'd say these 4 are what I'd point to. Growing portion sizes, lack of physical activity, the frequency and the types of places when we eat away from home, and calories, specifically calories from sugar, that come in our beverages these days. Regardless of the reason, it boils down to the simple fact of calories. Now, I like this definition at the bottom of the slide better. Tiny creatures that live in your closet and sew your clothes a little bit tighter every night. That seems like a pretty good way to define a calorie, doesn't it? When in fact, what a calorie is simply the measurement of energy available to us from food. They're neither good nor bad, they just exist, and they are the single most important aspect when we're trying to talk weight control. In a perfect world, the calories we eat would be balanced out by the calories we burn off through activity or exercise. And as you can see in the scale represented here, we can shift from either direction of weight gain or weight loss depending on the foods we're eating and the calories they provide, and the activity we're doing and the calories that burns. Somewhere in the middle is this elusive idea of weight maintenance, where our food and our energy would be relatively balanced to achieve or maintain a balanced weight. Now, there's a lot of different ways to define a healthy weight. We're going to talk about a few of them, the first one being body mass index or BMI. Most, if not all of you, should have heard of this before or seen it on printouts from your doctor's office visits. And it's a measurement of body fat based on height and weight. But what I want to say is that this equation was actually developed by a mathematician who acknowledged the fact that there were some serious limitations. First of all, it doesn't account for muscle mass. So professional athletes, they appear very high on our BMI charts, when in fact we know that it's not because of weight-related issues, but rather it's more their amount of muscles. The other issue is that it does not distinguish between genders. And we also know that height and weight isn't going to give us a perfect model for the perfect weight. But because none of us are professional athletes, and because for most of us the BMI can capture a relatively accurate assessment of our weight, we use it as a tool, one tool, to help us assess where we're at in terms of risk. What you'll notice is the stoplight colors on here, green, yellow, and red, indicated by the normal, overweight, and obese ranges. They help us determine relatively low risk, moderate risk, and high risk for different disease states based on our weight. Because in general, as our weight increases, so does our risk for chronic disease, including heart disease, diabetes, fatty liver, certain types of cancer, hypertension, metabolic syndrome, and other conditions. Now, what you'll also notice is that underweight is also in the yellow category here. Individuals whose weight is too low are also at high risk for some chronic disease, although theirs are different than the disease states I mentioned earlier. We're going to look at somebody who's 5'8" as an example for how to use this chart. So if everybody can eyeball the 5'8" on the bottom part of this axis, if we go up from 5'8" to the bottom part of our green curve in this normal BMI chart, somebody who's 5'8" is within a normal BMI range at the weight of 120 all the way up to about 160, according to this chart. That's a pretty wide range. It also tells us that the risk is lower within that weight but it doesn't guarantee that being in that weight is also going to be an indicator of perfect health. Okay? Using BMI is one way to measure where you're at, not only in risk, but also for height and weight assessment. Another tool we use often in healthcare is body shape. Apple versus pear, anybody ever heard of this one? Like the shape of the fruit, apple-shaped individuals carry their extra weight around the middle. If you think about how many vital organs are in the center of your body, it's no wonder that individuals whose extra weight or fat surrounds those organs are at higher risk for health problems, compared to individuals who are more pear-shaped, carrying the weight more so at the hips or below the waist. If we have two individuals who both weigh 200 pounds, someone who's an apple shape is going to probably get more attention from their healthcare team in terms of the need to lose weight than somebody who's 200 pounds and pear-shaped, just by nature of where the weight is collecting. Now, if you're an apple, you're not going to become a pear. If you're a pear, you're not going to become an apple. And if you're either, you're not going to become a celery. You have a shape for a reason, okay? But it doesn't mean that that shape also needs to dictate the number on the scale or the BMI associated with it. Regardless of the tool or indicator that we use to measure risk, what's important to know is that there's different ways we can use to try to better manage our weight. And we're going to talk through a few of those today. The why, what, when, where, and how of eating that help us to better manage weight. And instead of starting with what to eat first, I'd rather us discuss why. Why do we eat? The obvious answer is hopefully hunger. So let me ask this differently. Why else do we eat? Think about it, say it out loud if you feel comfortable. Give me some reasons as to why else we eat. We can come up with a number of different reasons. I'll give you a couple. Because it's time to eat. Because I always eat at 5 o'clock, or because I always eat a snack with my favorite show in the evening. It's a habit. It's there. I'm at a get-together with friends and the food is sitting out on a buffet table. Am I hungry? Don't know, but it's there. What about for those of you that might have already indicated an emotional reason? Because I'm stressed, because I'm bored, because I'm happy or sad, fill in the blank, but emotional eating can strike a chord with many individuals and has nothing to do with hunger. Did anybody here grow up as a member of Clean Your Plate Club? You're not done eating until everything on your plate is gone because there are starving children in insert mom's favorite country here, right? Well, here's the thing. If we're using our plate as a marker of hunger or fullness, we're relying on an external cue to dictate what should be done internally. So instead of using our plate or our emotion or the clock or the TV show to be the dictator as to why we should be eating, I'd encourage us to go back to the basics and use something as simple as the hunger scale to help guide this process. Now, as elementary as it may seem, this can be a really useful place when trying to relearn what hunger feels like, what fullness feels like, and when a good time to eat might be. I have some clients that like to keep this inside their pantry doors, inside their fridge, or on the outside of their fridge as a reminder that if you find yourself grabbing a snack and you're not sure why, maybe stop and wait for about 10 minutes and think about it. Am I reaching for that candy bar in my desk drawer because I had a stressful meeting? If so, I'm eating because of stress, not because of hunger, and I need to stop, slow down, and begin to assess that feeling, give it its own time to process, and deal with it differently. In a perfect world, we'd eat when we're hungry, we'd stop when we're full, so that puts us at about a 3 on the hunger scale to start, and a 6 to a 7 on the scale to stop. But let me put that into tangible feelings for you. A 3 to a 4 feels like your stomach, is starting to cramp a little bit. maybe getting a tiny bit lightheaded, really starting to feel physical hunger. You might even hear your stomach growling. A 6 to a 7 means, you know what, even if there's a couple bites left on this plate, I feel good. I can comfortably push away from this table, stand up and walk down the hallway without feeling like I need to be rolled away. Thanksgiving dinner, that's like a 9 or a 10 on the hunger scale, okay? And eating to that point on a regular basis is not usually recommended. What we also see too is that a 5, neutral. I could eat. I'm not hungry, I'm not full, but I could eat. It's also not generally recommended as a great place to start or stop things because we're ignoring our body's internal cues. Taking a step back, being mindful of how we feel physically, mentally, and emotionally can help us better determine if the why behind why I'm eating is a reason that probably justifies this decision. But we wouldn't have a class in this nutrition series on eating and weight management if we didn't include the what. So let's talk food. We don't just eat a number, we eat food. And in a perfect world, we eat a variety of food in a relatively balanced portion mindset and use this plate as a guide. Now you've seen this plate in probably all of our classes. It serves as a reminder for just that. When we choose a variety of food groups and we try to portion them like this plate, we're going to do a lot better in terms of balancing not only our nutrition, but our calories and our weight as well. Making sure that about half of our plate is full of fruits and or vegetables is a great way to encourage portion control and ensure that we're filling up on some relatively high volume, low calorie foods. That half of our plate means we're going to get more bang for our buck because they're lower in fat and calories, higher in water, rich in fiber, vitamins, and minerals, and also means we can eat more of them, feel fuller, and consume fewer calories. Visually, if we look at these pictures of our stomach and compare 400 calories of 3 different types of food sources, we can see, even comparing our first and our third image here, that 400 calories of oil or a fat source is not going to take up too much room in our stomach, which means there's more room to eat more food and fill up on more calories. In contrast, if we look at the last picture on this slide, 400 calories of vegetables, now that's pretty well going to fill up our stomach. Same amount of calories, but the fill factor is totally different. Now, I'm not saying you can't have oil and you can only eat vegetables, but what I am advocating is that when we fill up on different balance of food, we usually can help prevent ourselves from filling out. We also can ensure we're generally healthier too. So let's put this into practice in a game. Now you don't have these slides because I don't want anyone cheating. And what I want to show you is a low volume comparison on the left and a high volume, lower calorie comparison on the right. So you see here we have one bagel with cream cheese. Assuming you liked a bagel, most of us could probably comfortably finish that bagel, even more so if you pour me a cup of coffee, but we could easily finish that bagel with cream cheese, and for the 520 calories it provides, probably not feel too uncomfortably full and be ready for our next snack or meal not too long after. But for 520 calories, how many bowls of oatmeal could you have instead? Feel free to write it down on your page or feel free to shout it out if you're comfortable. Three and a half is our answer. 3.5 bowls of oatmeal. Now, even if you love oatmeal, my guess is you probably couldn't comfortably finish the 3.5 bowls of oatmeal like you could have that one bagel. Am I right? Which means you probably filled up with fewer calories and lasted longer in terms of your fullness just by making a swap from a low volume to a high volume food choice. Let's do another one. Potato chips. This is a generous serving size of 15. But depending on the chip that you choose, I've seen serving sizes as low as 9 chips. If everybody could hold out their hand for me, 9 chips pretty easily fits in one hand, which means a couple handfuls of chips And for 150 calories a handful, it can potentially be a high calorie snack that doesn't really fill me up too much. Well, let's compare that to something else that's maybe higher volume, something like popcorn. How many cups of popped popcorn, no butter, no salt, my game, my rules, how many cups of popped popcorn could you have instead for the 150 calories that those chips provided? Write it down, say it out loud. Just for fun, one more for 5 cups. Hold out your hand again. The hand that easily held the serving of potato chips is going to easily overflow when we're talking about popcorn, 5 cups of it. In fact, even if you cupped both your hands together, my guess is 5 cups would still overflow your hands, leaving you with a more filling and more satisfying snack with fewer calories when all said and done. Here's my favorite one. What I want to point out with this is that the brand, and I'm picking on this brand, but a lot of our bottled smoothies could fall into this category. If you see on the front of this label, there's all sorts of things that I feel like is advertising this as a health food. Protein is on there a couple times. The picture looks pretty fresh, all natural, no sugar added. There's all sorts of labeling gimmicks on here. But it is less than the size of a standard size plastic water bottle. And for 440 calories, it's quite a bit for something that we drink down. Now we could drink those berries, or you could eat plain strawberries instead. So how many strawberries could you have? Medium size, not the ones that are tiny at a strawberry patch, not the huge ones that come like 5 in a quart, but medium-sized strawberries. How many could you have for 440 calories? Go ahead and write a number down. Not pints, not cups, actual berries. And I'm going to start you off with this. Here's 10, and I leave plenty of room on the screen for a reason. Because if I take us by rows of 10 all the way down to 74, my guess is most of us probably could not comfortably eat 74 strawberries like we could drink that beverage. We're either full or bored well before the 74 are up, meaning we're satisfied with fewer calories and more nutrition from this high volume snack choice. Now I won't make you guess on all of these. I want to show you this comparison here for veggie straws, often touted as a great health food. I'll tell you what, they're about similar to a potato chip in terms of their nutrition. Serving size is a little bigger than chips, so that's fortunate. But one serving of veggie chips probably doesn't even hold a candle to the fullness you'd feel after 4 full cups of raw veggies. Medium French fry. I've never heard anybody order a sandwich and 3 baked potatoes, but that's the calorie equivalent to your Whopper medium fry. And the calories down there, by the way, that's just for the medium fry, 410 calories. Now that baked potato doesn't have butter or sour cream on it, so I know that's bland and boring, but the idea is the potato is a much higher volume comparison to when we French fry those potatoes and add loads of oil and fat. Over the course of a day, nearly 1,600 calories look so different when we compare their volume. High calorie dense, low volume foods are pictured on the left. Low calorie dense, high volume foods pictured here on the right. Obviously, if you are pretty darn hungry, the choice is clear in terms of which one is going to leave you feeling the most full during the day. But you know, it's not just what we eat, it's what we drink too. There can be a lot of hidden calories, particularly those from sugar in some of our beverages. And they don't do much to fill us up, but they can do a lot to fill us out. So if you're drinking your calories, whether that comes from a sports drink, a soda, a juice, a cocktail, or even something like a lemonade, be mindful that those calories may not be serving you that well. If you look about the middle of the screen, a standard cola for 150 calories has 10 teaspoons of added sugar, and that's just for a can, for a 12-ounce can, not a bottle. American Heart Association recommends no more than 6 to 9 teaspoons per day of added sugar, and that one cola has 10, more than our daily recommendation. Beverage choices like foo-foo coffee drinks, regular sodas, sweet tea, they can add up. And in these options here, they're adding up to 795 total calories with the suggestions in blue. The alternatives below them, however, offer a much more inviting number at only 125 calories. And if you're working on balancing your calorie levels, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that 125 is less than 795, and that maybe I should reconsider the beverage options I'm choosing. Did we hit the what hard enough? Because let's move on to the when. Meal timing matters. When we eat matters. And in a perfect world, we'd be eating about every 4 to 6 hours throughout the day while awake, starting with a breakfast within 1 to 2 hours of waking up. If we're skipping breakfast on a regular basis, most research shows that we're likely to overeat and overcompensate later in the day. Now, if you're hungry in between meals, especially if you're going more than 6 hours between those meals, it may be helpful to plan in a snack. Not just helpful to curb the hunger, but even helpful for weight management so you don't find yourself so ravenous at the next mealtime. But make sure you plan for the meals first versus snacking or grazing mindlessly throughout the day and then filling in the extra calories with mealtime. Meals first, snacks second, if needed. The when also talks about speed of eating too. Try to allow for about 20 minutes for mealtime. And if you're not sure how long it takes you to eat a meal, set a timer on your phone or your microwave next time you're sitting down for dinner to see about how long it takes you to get through it. The average American eats dinner in 15 minutes or less. And the reason that's important to note is that it does take our stomachs and our brain at least 20 minutes to communicate. Meaning once our stomach feels physically full, it sends these hormone signals to the back of our brain to say, hey, put the fork down, you're full, you're done. But if we're eating in 15 minutes or less, we're not even allowing that signal to happen. So if you regularly leave the table and 10 minutes later you're uncomfortably full, maybe you're eating a little too quick. Allow yourself time to slow down. We've talked about the why, the what, the when. Let's discuss where. Eating out or in sometimes affects our food choices in pretty stark ways. And generally speaking, it can be more challenging to eat out than it is when we're in control of our choices at home. We have a whole class on dining out, so I'm not going to dive into that too much today, other than by saying dining out presents a whole slew of challenges, not just related to portions, but even with the nutrient content of some of those food choices. As often as possible, try to eat at home, but establish the time as a meal with a plate, a table, and a chair. So if you're running through the fast food line and eating your breakfast out of a bag, there's probably no plate, table, or chair in your car, right? Or if you're eating at home, but you're eating on the couch while you're watching your favorite show, well, you're probably not eating on a table. And unless that chair was your recliner, probably not using a chair. Maybe you're using a plate, but really trying to establish mealtime and limit distractions. If you're eating alone or you don't like the idea of eating in silence, consider music for the background or a podcast to listen to instead of something to be watching. If we're using TV or a computer or a device to be a distraction during mealtime, it is very difficult to tune in to hunger and fullness cues because we're focusing on something other than just our food in our body. And last but not least, how? Either how do I get started or how do I maintain? What does it look like to continue? First and foremost, managing our weight to either maintain it or to lose it. This is not a diet, okay? Diets start on a Monday and they end on a Friday, And they involve cheating and guilt and rules and restrictions, and frankly, they don't work. So this is not a diet, this is a lifestyle. This is something where if you feel like you quote unquote mess up or have one bad day, it doesn't ruin the fact that you might have done well for 3 weeks. Maybe you need to indulge and plan for those indulgences so you don't overindulge by having restrictions or unrealistic expectations with a diet mindset. And be realistic. If the weight you have in mind for yourself is a number you haven't weighed since high school, you might want to rethink that number. Even if your doctor provided you with a number based on your BMI to achieve, but you know there's no way you're going to be able to comfortably achieve that without really restricting your food, be realistic. How much can I lose and in what time frame? Because we want to do it sustainably so that as the weight comes off, it stays off, and we can continue doing this well into the future. A lot of times, some self-monitoring or accountability from the standpoint of food logs or weigh-ins can help too. I don't recommend weighing yourself more than 1 time per week, unless of course you have heart failure and you still need to weigh yourself daily to record fluid changes. Food logging. My favorite tracking device, or tracking form I should say, is the MyFitnessPal. That website or app is a pretty wide food database. Can serve as a good accountability tool to see how many calories you're getting, how you're staggering them throughout the day, and what changes potentially you need to make. If you don't like doing it online, consider writing it down on a piece of paper or in a journal so you can look back and notice trends about yourself and see changes or improvements over time. And certainly not last, or not least, I should say, is exercise. Be mindful of physical activity. That's the other part of that balanced equation we talked about at the very beginning, because it's not just food that manages our weight, it's how we move our body. American Heart Association and American College of Sports Medicine both recommend 150 minutes per week of moderate physical activity for overall health and weight loss. Moderate exercise I have listed there on the left, and when you come to cardiac rehab, that's what you're getting, moderate physical activity. If you come to cardiac rehab 3 days a week, 90 of your 150 minutes of cardio, check, you already did. If you're going to pulmonary rehab 2 times a week, 60 of your 150 minutes of exercise. Check. Done. What do you think the best form of exercise is? Jot it down. Guess what? It's the one you're going to do. If you wrote down walking and it hurts to walk, you're probably not going to do that. If the only form of activity in your mind is swimming, or that's the best form of activity, but you don't have access to a pool, you're not going to be able to do it. And you're going to set yourself up for failure saying, well, I can't swim, so I can't exercise, so I can't lose weight. Find the form of activity you can do and you do enjoy, and then go do it. Maybe it's group classes or having a friend to exercise with or walk with so you stay accountable. Maybe it's listening to music or, again, a podcast so that you're distracted during your activity and you're able to fit in the minutes you need to actually hit that 150 minute per week goal. Maybe it's biking, maybe it's an elliptical, maybe it's changing it up or doing a video at home. Find a form of activity you enjoy and you're going to stick with. Now, something we're seeing a lot of emerging research on is sleep. So I wanted to be sure to give a little note to sleep in our weight management presentation. What we know is that good quality sleep helps to regulate various hormones associated with weight loss. We also know that sleep deprivation or inadequate sleep can increase ghrelin, our hunger hormone, can leave us too tired to exercise, affect how our body burns calories, and certainly influence food choices. If I'm too tired to exercise, I'm not going to do it. If I'm too tired to cook, I'm not going to do it. So I'm probably going to go dine out or grab convenient food that may not be the most balanced. Poor sleep also increases our stress hormone called cortisol, and if you're a stress eater, that's all sorts of bad issues for you. But elevated levels of cortisol have been linked to poor health outcomes as well. So if sleep is something you struggle with, Maybe worth having a conversation with your medical provider or your primary care doctor to discuss options for better sleep management. So here's our motivation slide. If you change nothing, nothing will change. So what are you going to change? And once you've determined what it is you might need to change, be prepared and set a short-term goal. So for example, if what you think you need to change is consuming more fruits and vegetables, then guess what? You should probably buy them so they're in your house and you can eat them. Track your progress. At the end of the week, how many of those are you actually getting through, or how many did you throw out? Who are your cheerleaders? Who are going to help you in this? So when you go to a potluck at a friend's house, maybe you're bringing the salad and another friend's bringing a fruit tray, so you know you've got options there to fill half your plate in a way that makes you feel like you're satisfying your goal. And celebrate success along the way. Preferably without food, okay? So just because you ate vegetables all week at dinner doesn't mean you get a brownie the next day. But be mindful. How are you celebrating your success? Enjoy the benefits along the way. Managing our weight comes with less stress and anxiety, improved mood and energy, and lower health risks that keep us moving and enjoying life well into the future. We can't change everything overnight, nor would I want you to. So my biggest encouragement is to find one small area. Not just eat more vegetables, but maybe eat vegetables with dinner 3 nights a week. A very specific, short-term trackable goal. Not just exercise more, but walk for 10 additional minutes 4 days a week. Find ways to say, how can I sustainably change my behaviors so that they become long-term parts of my lifestyle? Thank you for your time and have a great rest of your day.